I'm Joshua Isaac Smith, and I've been in London for about 15 years. I have a very interesting story, but I'll shorten it to say that I created a yoga program that became very successful here, and I was due to fly over on September 10, 2001, transferring through Montreal. My plane was delayed. By the time I got here and then checked into my hotel room, the Twin Towers were down. I couldn't get back. So I ended up teaching and everything just took off. I created a program called Yoga Boxing, which is yoga, boxing, African dance, aerobics, and Tai Chi, and it became this big thing, and Carlton TV caught on to it, yada, yada. Anyway, I've always been working with trauma and I've been fascinated of what happens in the body with stress and how we get locked into literally body memory. So that led me into therapy and eventually working with Angela in organizations and leadership, which is what I do now. So good to be here. I'm really excited.
Thank you. You missed a very important bit.
Well, I'll let you fill that part in.
We got married. You met me, okay. So
I'm going to let you say that.
Okay, so a minor detail. Okay, so I'm Angela. Professionally, I'm a forensic psychologist, and I started doing this many, many years ago in all sorts of forensic environments, prisons, etc. And I fell into resilience, and I will tell you my story because actually it led me into the research into resilience, and I'll share that with you soon. Thank you.
Well, hang on a second. Do you mind saying? Angela, you forgot an important bit.
What?
Angela is the leading trainer in the UK in resilience,
yes.
Quietly. She's not she wouldn't say that to you. Right?
Yes,
but
I
she's
am.
done over 1,000 courses over the years, from prisons to schools to organizations. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, because I like to applaud her, right? Okay, great. Okay, and mic is off. And we're ready. Okay, so let's look at what is resilience. Let's look at what is resilience, because resilience is this really multi-dynamic process. Because when you think of resilience, there is a physical level of resilience at the body level, right? So there's your physical capacity to actually deal with adversity, right? So for example, for me, I am much more resilient after I've eaten breakfast. Right? I have a lot of energy, I can handle a lot, I can go throughout my day, and so forth and so on. My resilience is rubbish if I haven't eaten. So my resilience drops at a certain point and I become grumpy, right? So I can't handle as much. So your body really matters. Or if I haven't done enough exercise, right? If I haven't worked out enough, then my resilience levels can be impacted. So resilience involves a biological body component, as well as an emotional component, right? So emotional resilience is really about the care system, our mental and physical ability to manage emotions whilst adapting to challenges and adversity. And notice the word adaptation is used a lot, because what we found in our research is that resilience is really our ability to adapt to a challenge or to a situation that creates stress for us. And that's really what differentiates resilience, emotional resilience from, say, emotional intelligence, right? Resilience is a process. It's a flow. It's constantly moving. There are so many different moving parts to think about. Emotional intelligence is mostly focusing on, we'll look at in a moment, managing our emotions, adapting, harnessing our emotions, and so forth. And the final component is the mind and our mental capacity. So if you think about this, if you think about adverse circumstances, anyone who's been through a difficult time, you can really see how when resilience is about recovering or the ability to actually adapt, but there are so many different aspects to consider when thinking about being resilient and what is really a person who has high resilience versus a person who's low resilience. So I have a story I'd like to share quickly, and it happened last night with Angela and I. We have this lovely little Palmapoo named Ralph. He's adorable. And you know, Palmapoos are like these designer puppies, right? You know, Palmapoos is like a Pomeranian and a toy poodle mixed. And they're the cutest. They're just cute. They're like, those dogs, when I was a kid, the dogs that are battery powered, they go, "Ruff, ruff," and you hit them. Yeah, they're just really cute, right? Anyway, Ralph had a bit of issue last night. He had a bit of diarrhea. So, to make a long story short, he has long fur, so we had to clean his bum. So Angela asked me to do it, and I'm not used to doing it, but she is. So she's holding him to go through the ritual. But I can tell he's a bit uncomfortable. But he's been through the ritual before, so he trusts Angela, he trusts me, goes through it. So I notice as I'm going through actually caring for him and making sure he's okay. I mean, he's a dog. He doesn't care about his bum, does he? At the end of the day, right? He just wants to be a dog. But what I noticed is that he was starting to, the longer we held him, he started to become a bit more anxious. And so we noticed that. Anyway, got through it. As soon as Angela put him down, he started scratching the carpet, then he just rolled around, and then he just took off running throughout the flat, just running. Now this is exactly what is supposed to happen with us when we go through an adversity. Because if you think about it on a biological level, even though that was a very caring situation, he felt safe, there's still something in his body that felt held down. And this is where the research on trauma is very interesting, from Bessel van der Kolk basically in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's one of the leading researchers in the field of post-traumatic stress disorder. He actually said one of the worst traumas children experience is when they go to the hospital and they're actually held down to be given a shot or held down by the doctor, right, against their will, because some kids just are afraid of needles. So if you think about that child that's held down against their will and so forth and so on, and they're not able to go around the flat, run around, scratch the carpet and so forth, they're not able to discharge that stress, right? And this is really what resilience is about. We get stuck in stress reactions. It gets stuck in our body, it gets stuck in our minds, and certain emotions get stuck. Therefore, we get stuck. And this is where work we're doing at Adapt Faster is to help people get unstuck. And this involves the body, it involves the mind, and it involves the emotional system, right? So when we look at emotional intelligence, it's this amazing field that developed in the late 90s around being able to manage your emotions, being aware of your emotions, being able to harness your emotions to make decisions. Mainly, what's powerful about emotional intelligence is it's your ability to take responsibility for your emotions, to be accountable for your emotions. Because at the end of the day, you can actually be responsible for your emotional reactions, right? However, what we found is if we've been, and Angela will go into this in her talk about what happens to us, how do these emotions happen? How do we get stuck and so forth and so on? If we haven't gone through that discharge of an experience, right? From a physical experience, from an emotional and mental experience, then you can see on some level it seems like we can't be responsible for our emotions. These things just happen to us. We sort of just get hijacked. Like things just, a stressful event happens and we react and we don't know why. So we're going to look at why that happens, right? But resilience, the key is everything is about a flow. Resilience is like being the river, being like the river. And if you notice a river, the river can flood, the river keeps flowing, right? There could be a drought and there might not be as much water, but the river keeps flowing. And that's the idea of resilience. How can you keep flowing even though there are challenges and adversities that you're going to face? So here's the interesting thing about the research on resilience. The most resilient people are able to actually be self-compassionate. That's what the research shows. And it's a very interesting thing when you think about self-compassion, kindness to yourself, being able to make friends with yourself, sharing goodwill with yourself in the midst of a very, very stressful or traumatic situation. Can you actually look within yourself and express gratitude for who you are or even for what's happening in that moment? Of course, the immediate reaction of a stressful event is to do the opposite, to be in survival, right? So we'll look at this later, what happens when we go into survival. So, but what's interesting about self-compassion is that the field was more or less created by Kristen Neff, who's a researcher at the University of Texas at Austin. And you can go to her selfcompassion.org website and go through all of her validated and very, very accepted studies and questionnaires and so forth. But here's the most fascinating thing that her research has demonstrated and unearthed. It's actually quite remarkable in my world. And when I heard her say it in a lecture, I actually, that moment where I just blinked my eyes. So I asked her about it after the lecture, and it's unbelievable. And then I worked with her colleague, a person named Christopher Gardner, who's at Harvard, and I spoke to him about it. What has happened is that self-compassion sounds like a good idea, but actually, in her research, 76% of people on her questionnaires, on all her tests, have more compassion for others than they do for themselves. 76%. That's over 3/4 of a population of a sample in studies. They're harder on themselves than they are on others. Now think about that for you for a moment. Are you more compassionate with others than you are for yourself? Do you have a lot of empathy for other people and maybe less empathy for yourself? Do you beat yourself up? In bringing this up in organizations, resilience at work, some people say, oh, well, but my self-critic is actually who motivates me during tough times. It's the voice I heard at uni to get me through my exams. It's my voice I hear for deadlines, to just really, get up and push forward. But the difference here is that in that moment where you're working on a project, maybe being a little self-critical can be motivating and helpful. The problem is, can you switch that self-criticism off? And the research is suggesting that 76% of us can't. So think about how that's going to impact your body, your emotions, and your mind if you cannot actually be kind to yourself, or if you struggle with being kind to yourself. And that's really where the tire meets the road with resilience. Most resilient people, highly resilient people, are able to manifest and practice self-compassion. So if you have any questions, write them down, comments, whatever. We'll have a chance to discuss them after the talk. And the number one reason why this exists is because of something called shame. Right? Now, shame is normally a very uncomfortable topic, especially to bring up at work, because it's something that we tend to bury. It's something that we don't like to address. It's something that sort of is the elephant in many of our relationships, but we don't really talk about it. But the thing about shame to understand is that shame is actually a neurobiological necessity in terms of being humans, in terms of being primates, and in terms of being mammals. So think about it. Anyone have children? Okay, if you have children, okay. So grown or young or ish? Okay. Yeah, so okay. So when your child, and I know, so at about 18 months to let's say 24 months, when your child got into that investigating, curiosity, exploring everything, and all of a sudden could start realizing that they could walk and they had speed, and they start walking outside and walking towards the intersection where cars are coming. And there's a point where if you're, as a parent, you yell out, no, stop, because they're getting too close. Wait for mommy, right? Now on some level, that is a necessary lesson, right? Because the child has to learn inhibitory control. There is a dangerous world out there. You just can't go out there exploring everywhere. You have to understand what's safe, what's unsafe, right? So according to Alan Shore, a neurobiologist who focuses on child development, that is a shaming experience, but it's a pro-social version of shame. It helps your child actually be able to fit into a tribe, right? So if we think about the evolution of the human species, shame has been with us because we're social animals, right? So that is how shame as a relational experience is designed to help us develop more resilience, because we begin to rely on each other, we begin to trust each other, we begin to learn how to have conversations with one another. We can't always make the conversation about us, right? Sometimes we have to have empathy and really have interaction with people and so forth. So shame is how it all begins. There's only one problem with that. The problem is that shame can also be weaponized, right? It can also become toxic. It can also be something that becomes destructive in the relationship between a parent and a child, or a relationship between children and adults. So if you experience something like rejection sensitivity, or how many people take things personally? Right, yeah, most of us, right? Okay, exactly. So if we're taking things personally, and how many people have difficulty taking in feedback? Like, ish, right, ish. Just like, yeah, so like your boss is giving you feedback, and they're being a bit critical, and you're just like, right? Your face starts to, you know, some tension in your, right. So that might border on something called rejection sensitivity, right? So here's the idea about what's happening in that. What's happening in that is when you think of shame, and this is sort of the weaponized, destructive version of it. So this is from Patricia DeYoung, and I have had to adapt it a bit because it's a very therapy definition. But look at the idea of shame as experience of our sense of self disintegrating in relation to punishing and punitive others, okay? So if you have this sort of rejection sensitivity thing and your boss is giving you feedback, and if you roll back the tape and you realize that you were given feedback perhaps when you were younger by a teacher or a coach, and they were really harsh on you, and they were really punitive, or they were really punishing, then you're probably gonna be a bit sensitive when your boss is giving you feedback, right? So there is a little bit of shame there. Could you see that? And then if you look at this idea of taking things personally, right? We'll start to look at that in a moment. You can start to see that that's something where we're lacking some sense of boundaries, some sense of agency, some sense of ability to actually say, actually, no, I can take some of that in, but I don't have to take in the parts that I'm wrong or I'm bad. I can actually have compassion for myself, right? So this is where self-compassion is the antidote to shame. And this is now what the research is showing. So in terms of resilience, self-compassion is critical, right? Any Brene Brown fans here? Brene Brown, right? Okay, great. So her book, Daring Greatly. So she revealed that there are basically, the research on shame says that there are 3 basic reactions to shame. You can move against it, meaning you can fight it. You can move away from it, means you can run away from it. Or you can do what's called move toward, which is please and appease. Now, for those of you who take things personally, can you start to make the connection that maybe that pleasing and appeasing part is what's happening in terms of how your body is taking on shame? Maybe you're trying to please too much. Maybe you're trying to be polite, but maybe your body is telling you something different, right? So let's just take a quick moment. Whenever you're ready, you can, when you finish your notes, and we can go back. We can go back through slides if you like at the break. But I want to take you through a quick experience. So just put your pens down for a moment. Put your pens down, and just in your body, just allow yourself to just both feet on the ground for a moment, so you're a bit grounded, and just an experiment. Just let your head drop down, let your shoulders roll forward. And imagine you're going into just complete collapse. Like, just collapse your ribs in. Really, your head is getting heavy, your shoulders heavy. And just notice what this is like. Notice how your gaze, your eyes, it's hard to look up right now, right? And it seems like in this position, it would be very difficult to be positive or open, right? So just notice that. Don't worry, you're not going to stay in this for too long. And take a breath. See what it's like to breathe with your ribs collapsed in. You can barely breathe. Right? Okay. Now just slowly come up. Right, just roll your shoulders for a moment. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite. So the opposite is we're going to actually create a boundary. Now for this, I want to make sure that you don't knock your glasses over. You don't have to move. I just want you to be aware that if you have stuff on your desk, just be aware of where the level that it's at, right? Because here's what we're going to do. Hands up for a moment. Hands up. And we're just going to inhale and just going to push out and exhale. Exhale through the mouth. So we're going to create the opposite of collapse. We're going to create space. Inhale and push out, exhale. Inhale, push out, exhale. Good. Now this time, When you push out, say no. Here we go. Ready? Go. No.
No.
One more. No.
No.
One more.
No.
Okay. Now, notice how that was in your body. Now we're going to go to the affirmative. Hands up. Do something called power pumps. We're going to hands up. We're going to pump up and say yes. Here we go. Ready? Go. Yes. Again. Yes. Again. Yes. 2 no's. No. No. And 2 yeses. Yes. Yes. Good. Now just relax your hands for a moment. And a balancing breath. Just inhale, palms up. And let your palms just drift down and exhale. Exhale through the mouth. Good. And just take a moment and just notice the difference between the collapse that you were feeling before and the expansion when you actually create your own space. So you can see that boundaries are an essential part of being resilient, and they're an essential part of you being self-compassionate, of you creating more space for yourself. And that's the idea that we're working with here in terms of being more emotionally resilient. How many of you, when you said no, felt, ooh, not used to that. Oh, that felt uncomfortable. Because in your body, you're actually demanding that no, right? So just notice if there was some hesitation saying it or some reaction like, ooh, right? So you can see that if you're struggling with saying no, you can see that probably going to take things personally, right? It's probably going to be something. But the antidote to that is being able to define your space, which is what you just did. So I have a quick story on that, and that is that it happened very quickly. I, about a year ago, transformed the relationship with my mother through doing exactly what we just did. Now, I didn't go, no, right? But let me tell you the story. My mother lives in Washington, D.C., where I've grown up, right? I'm here in London, and I've been living here, I said, 15 years. Do you think I was running away from shame, right? You know what I mean? In terms of the idea that, you know, like, do you think I could create enough distance? I mean, maybe if I were in Antarctica, it would be more obvious, but, right? So it's nothing against my mother. It's just that on some level, when I started to understand the research, I started to look at myself and say, maybe that's why I'm here. So I decided to transform my relationship with my mother by saying, okay, I'd like to try an experiment. Rather than us doing our normal thing when I come back home and hugging and kissing and all that, I would like to shake your hand. How do you feel about that? She was like, and she asked for some explanation. So if I said, well, it just helps me with my boundaries. It helps me with my boundaries with women. It helps me with my boundaries with people. If I can do that with you, then I feel that I can actually be okay in myself. I didn't say self-compassion, but I knew I would feel okay with being kinder to myself. This is a year ago. So we did it. It was weird for her. It was weird. But let me tell you what's happened in this last year. My mother's completely transformed her life. She was looking for a life purpose, everything else. We started a nonprofit foundation called the Happy Minds Foundation. We started working with NIH scientists in terms of, we're going to start working with inner city youth and mindfulness. The techniques we're doing right now, we're going to start bringing that to schools. We've connected with some big fundraisers in America and so forth. All this happened because I was able to say no. And my mother's the happiest I've seen her because that's part of the reason why we had some distance in the last 10 years. She just wasn't happy in her life. And I didn't want any part of that. I mean, I love my mother, but I just didn't want, I wanted her to be happy, but I can't control her happiness. It's up to her to decide to be happy. So this is how quickly this process works, right? You can transform your relationships by being self-compassionate. And this is exactly what the resilience research is showing. That if we stay stuck in survival for too long, if we stay stuck in that reaction of being in a place where we're not feeling good about ourselves, where we feel maybe shame, we're taking things personally, we have that sensitivity to rejection, that's only going to limit our capacity to grow, right? So let's do a quick exercise again. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do, and then it's going to be easier for the cameras to basically, and recordings to be off so you have some room, because you're going to stand up and do this one, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to put your left foot forward and your right foot back, and you're going to rock heel to toe. I'm just going to show you, right? You're going to rub your palms like this, and then you're going to inhale and exhale, right? So this is all in the idea of transforming any place where you're stuck through movement in your body, right? The body is an important aspect of resilience. And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side, rock heel to toe, right? Just inhale and exhale. So this is all the idea to teach that resilience is like the river. resilience is always flowing. And the more you can keep your body moving, or your breathing, mindfulness, yoga, watching what you, whatever it is, creating movement helps you be more resilient, okay? So we're able to move through adversity like the river, right? Being like the river. Imagine you're able to continue to flow through obstacles that come up. And you can train your mind, and you can work with your emotions, you can embrace your emotions, and you can actually focus simply on allowing your body to move. Okay, so here's a test, quick test to prove that we're born emotionally intelligent. Which is the real smile? Julia Roberts or Avril Lavigne?
Julia.
How do you know? Her eyes, right? Boom, the ocularis oculi. What else do you notice? What's the...
She's holding it, the smile.
She's holding the smile?
Yeah, it's forced. You can tell.
You can tell. You have a bit of tension in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? So that's the zygomatic major, right? So this is the Duchenne smile. So we can actually read faces. So we were born day one with a fully functioning emotional system. And that's part of our basic operating system when it comes to emotions. On day one, we're born, an infant is born with an active emotion system. The amygdala is fully activated, fully operational, right? That's the fight and flight center. And we know why, right? Because as humans, like primates, we have to spend time before our brains grow to the point where we can actually sustain ourselves, to feed ourselves and take care of ourselves, right? So that care system is really important. The next system to actually grow is called the error correction center, right? The ability to learn more, what we just talked about. This is where shame comes in. We start to learn things we can't do, how to have conversations, how to be connected with others. The last part to come online is number 3. This is where the lateral structures of the brain. This is where we start to create working memory. The brain is growing, we can have more capacity. But here's the thing. That would be great if it were that simple and if it were that linear. That's actually how the brain grows, step by step. The problem is that in a traumatic situation, we lose this area and this area. So think about it. Think about anybody who's had any kind of tragedy, maybe a death in the family or something, a shock or anything like that. Moments after it happened or you receive the news, could you actually talk? Could you actually have perspective? Could you actually do a math equation? No, right? You couldn't, right? That's not the time to sort of think about Einstein and calculus, right? Because your brain is focused on survival. And this is the first phase of resilience that Angela will take you through in her 4 phases model. That whenever any adversity happens, I don't care who you are, I don't care if you're the Dalai Lama, I don't care how much you meditate, you cannot override millions of years of evolution. This is a fight or flight center, right? So the question is, as Muhammad Ali in that quote says, it's not getting knocked down, it's how long you stay down. So learning resilience helps you to actually understand that you don't have to stay stuck in that fight or flight area for too long. The strategy is, how do you get to these higher centers? How do you get these higher centers activated so we can start to accept the situation, we can start to be more curious, we can learn something, lessons about the situation, and the situation doesn't have to be a tragedy. Actually, it could be a catalyst for something that spurred us on to growth. And this is exactly what happened to me in my life. I wouldn't be doing this right now if I didn't have a huge adversity in my late 20s and early 30s when I was a tech entrepreneur out in California. Right? So it's something where I wanted to understand this thing called trauma, what had happened, and so forth and so on. And so here I am talking about it, right? Years later. So Dan Siegel has a model on this. And he calls it's the window of tolerance. And he says we all have a safe zone. Window of tolerance says we all have this area of peacefulness, happiness, where we can be resilient and self-compassionate, right? It's like a window, and it's there. The problem is, again, as we'll see in the 4 phases, when an adversity strikes, that safe zone tends to shrink, right? We tend to have less capacity to deal with things. So think about yourself and what's happened with you in your life. that when adversity struck initially, or when adversity hit, you probably had less room to actually deal with taking in information. You probably might not have been able to have conversations with people that were helpful. You probably might have been a bit sort of angry, upset, sad. You might have had these extreme emotions. And what Dan Siegel was saying is because your window of tolerance was actually small. So what happens instead is you have a hyperarousal reaction and a hypoarousal. Hyper is where we have adrenaline that switches on and takes us into actually moving and needing to take action. It's called upregulating. We have to go, we have to fight, or we have to flee. Hypoarousal is where we actually literally freeze, or we just completely collapse in the nervous system, right? Complete, just absolutely no energy conservation, or we're even hiding. Like when we took that shame position, could you feel that? It was a bit like a flop, like no energy, nothing. It's almost like hiding from the world, right? So that's a hypoarousal reaction. So the idea is, with resilience, is how can we broaden that safe zone? How can we make that safe zone as big as possible, even though we're stressed at the moment, even though there's a challenge, even though there's something scary out there? Can we keep our window of tolerance open wide enough so we can actually be in a growth mode using the 4 phases model that we're reviewing, right? And that's the challenge of resilience. So let's go through another quick exercise. So it's the idea of being safe. So these are from my eye movement system, and we did these in a school system in Washington, D.C. with kids who were troubled. This is back in 2006, 2007, and we taught them how to concentrate and so forth and so on, and they loved the infinity sign, and they were able to calm themselves down so much that their test scores went up, right? Because they could expand their window of tolerance. All of a sudden, some of the kids came from families with addicted mothers and all kinds of trauma. By the time they got to school, some of them hadn't eaten, so they're in this high stress reaction, but they learned they didn't have to stay there. They could actually take control and be responsible for their own feelings and emotions, right? So this is what we did. We'll do it all together. So all you're gonna do is I'll take you through it first. You're just gonna see the word safe. When you close your eyes, you're gonna think or see the word safe. If you're not visual, just sort of quietly say it inside yourself, the word safe. And then as you move your eyes like the infinity sign, right? You don't have to move your finger, but you're gonna move your eyes like the infinity. And every time you come to the center, you're gonna say safe. Come to the center with the eyes, safe. Come to the center, safe, okay? Ready? So just close your eyes when you're ready, right? And just start moving your eyes in an infinity sign. So go on one loop. As soon as you come to the middle, just say safe. Come around, safe. Safe. Just say it to yourself, just quietly. Right? And just notice as you do that, just notice what happens in your body. Notice what happens in your experience. Right? Just another, good. Just relax your eyes for a moment. And take a second, keep your eyes closed if you can, and just look up and down for a moment. This is just an integrative eye movement. So I work a lot with eye movements, because I find eye movements access the brain really quickly. And just relax your eyes. Take a deep breath in, and blow out, exhale. One more, deep breath in, and blow out, exhale. Good. And when you're ready, just gently open your eyes. And just notice. In this place, just notice, do you feel your capacity is wider? Do you feel your window of tolerance is wider? Do you feel like you can really be more open? You can be more, your brain is more access to your brain. And this is what researchers at the University of Chicago discovered, is that by being able to tune into our feelings, this moment where you are right now, this feeling moment, our emotions, we have something called a privileged window. We have an opportunity to actually make more accurate predictions of very random events, right? Which is extraordinary. So if you want to know more about that, you can Google the emotional oracle effect. So emotions are really critical to how we make decisions, and understanding resilience allows us to broaden our capacity so we can actually use our emotions, we can use our body, and we can start to understand mentally how to actually allow ourselves to take in whatever is happening in the moment, good or bad, and be able to be self-compassionate, be able to have boundaries, and to be able to make decisions that really help us or help our team or help our people around us or our family or whatever. And this is really the essence of what resilience is. So, the final part is, why aren't all of us just resilient? Why are 76% of people are more compassionate with others than they are with themselves, right? Because of something called the judge. We all have a judge, an inner critic, right? So everybody just take your hands for a moment and just move your hands like this, right? That's your inner critic. So you put on some clothes today, and that inner critic was like, "Oh, don't wear that," or "Oh, they look nice in that." No, maybe not, right? That's the inner critic. Okay, relax your hands. So the thing about your inner critic is, the problem is that there are certain emotions that your inner critic doesn't like. There are certain emotions that might not be safe for your inner critic, right? There are certain feelings that your inner critic might push away. And again, if resilience is about expanding your window of tolerance, being open to be responsible for your own safety, then some of these exiled or banished emotions might be emotions that might help you in whatever your adversity is, whatever your next step is in your life. It might be that you, by banishing them, like with little Ralph, he was able to go through his experience and not be left with anything. But we can't shake that stuff off very easily. So if we're banishing emotions, then it could be that we're stuck somewhere emotionally. It could be something where we're denying some aspect of ourselves, our own intelligence in terms of our emotions. So I'll share with you very, very quickly who my inner critic is. And don't worry, because it's my inner critic, it's not your inner critic. And I discovered my inner critic at boarding school after a night of heavy drinking with my mates. And the A-Team was on. The television show, the A-Team was on. And for some reason, I fell asleep during that time. But for some reason, I woke up, and I swear, in my head was this guy, Mr. T. So Mr. T actually criticizes, is my inner critic, like, "Hey, don't put that on," right? Or, or "What you doing? But what you talking about?" I mean, so I started to actually notice that this character, I mean, it started for a while, then it went away, but then I actually thought back about it and went, actually, I do have a tough inner critic. I do have somebody in me that is constantly pushing me, right? But that's not always good, right? I was an athlete as a kid and so forth, so that was good when I was an athlete and I was active. But as I started to go on in my life, I started to realize, actually, I'm beating myself up more than I need to. And that's when I started to understand the importance of transforming your relationship to yourself through being self-compassionate. So, we're going to take a short break, but the question to have a discussion with in partners, and this might be where we get some recording in, who is your inner critic? I.e., what are some of the things that you notice your inner critic saying? How maybe does your inner critic stop you from actually being more expressive or being more empowered, or maybe even taking some risks that you might really want to take? There might be some things you really want to do, but you might be holding yourself back. This inner critic is saying, "You can't do that. What are you thinking about?" Right? So what we'll do, we'll turn the cameras off. So let's move on now to emotions. So I just chose 20 emotions. Those are all on your sheet. And what I'd like to do is go through an exercise of looking at exiled emotions that we've banished and pushed away, and also looking at negative emotions and looking at positive emotions. And you having an experience of sort of looking at how you relate to these emotions, or how your inner critic maybe might push certain emotions aside, and so forth and so on. So when you look at your sheet, I'd like you to first choose one or two of the emotions on your sheet that you feel might be exiled, meaning there's just no permission, there's no room for it. This is something that you just, when you actually look at the emotion, you feel something, right? I mean, just you look at the emotion, you right? Or something in your body might react. Maybe it's not the dramatic version, but maybe there's something in your body, like something in your stomach that goes, ooh. Maybe it's scary, maybe it hurts, something like that. So circle that emotion that gives you that sort of wobbly feeling. Yeah, sure. So maybe one or two, whatever feels right, but definitely one. Does everybody have at least one that they've circled?
Yeah.
Okay. Put an E, a small E, next to that for exiled. Okay. Next is maybe not such a discomforting emotion, but maybe it's just a negative emotion. Maybe it's just something that you don't like to feel, or maybe it's just something that you notice you go there sometime, but you don't like going there, right? So an exiled emotion is emotion you just totally don't allow yourself to go there. A negative emotion might be somewhere you go there, but it doesn't feel good, or you don't like it when you go there. So everybody have at least one of those? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Put an N next to that for negative. Okay? And now, the fun part, positive. Positive emotions. So maybe one or two emotions that you go, oh yeah, oh I love this emotion. Your body relaxes, you maybe smile, something feels good about it. Just the idea of, thank goodness I could actually get to the positive after dealing with those other two. Like, what a respite, right? So, and circle that and put a P next to that. Okay, everybody have a positive? Yeah? Put a P? Okay. So we're going to do an exercise here that I work with at the EMDR Center in London. I neglected to mention that. I'm assistant director of the EMDR. EMDR is a trauma therapy. So we train people in this trauma therapy, which is an evidence-based therapy which works with the body. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a tapping exercise, right? And we're going to do it in a very interesting way. So for this, I want to make sure that your both feet are on the ground, and you're. Do you want to? I'm going to sit. I'm going to do it standing only because it would be a drag to have to pull one of these chairs around and so forth. So I was, just you can do it sitting, but you can do this standing, by the way. Okay. So here's what you do. So your right hand. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. It was just there. It was just there. It was just a tapping. It was just, that's all. Okay. Now, take your right hand. All right, I'm guilty. We have to take that out the tape, right? Don't worry, I got you. Okay, so with your right hand, what you're going to do is you're going to tap right above your knee, an area called the vastus medialis area of the body. So what you're going to do, right, so just tap there with your right hand for a moment. Don't worry, we're going to do both, but I want you to get a sense of, okay, so what I want you to do now, hold on. When you tap, every time you tap, I want you to say that negative or exiled emotion. You choose either a negative or exiled one. It's up to you. All right? So every time you tap, just say that in your mind. So you tap and you're saying the emotion. All right? You're just tapping, just tapping with your hand. And you're just, okay, that's it. That'll stop. Here we go. Now with the left hand, raise your left hand. Repeat after me. No. Okay? Left hand goes on the left knee. Now you're going to tap in that positive emotion. Okay? So every time you tap that left knee, you're tapping in and saying that positive emotion. Every time you make contact with your knee, with your left hand only, right? You just left hand only. Don't tap both. Right? You're saying that, every time you tap, you're saying that positive emotion. Okay? Now, here we go. Ready? Now, I want to make sure that you're saying it every time you tap. Don't just tap. The key is you want to connect the areas of your brain, right? You want to connect the cognitive with the body. Okay, here we go. Now, what we're going to do, your eyes are going to be closed, right? I'm even going to close my eyes. If you hear me fall over, that means I got dizzy, right? So you're going to tap your right. You're going to say the negative or exiled emotion. You're going to tap the left, and you're going to say the positive emotion, right? In your head. Ready? So close your eyes and so tap. right, tap right, and tap left, right? So you're saying it in your head every time you tap. Right is on the negative or exiled, left is on the positive. So you're tapping both hands, right? Left and then right. Left and then right. Right? Left and then right. And you're alternating, right? So it's left and then right. So it's right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Right? Just notice what happens in your body. Right? So just tap so you're tapping literally 1, 2, 1, 2, right, right, left, right, left. Don't double up with the one and double up with the other, just right, left. And every time you tap, you're saying the emotion in your mind. And you can vary the speed if you like. Good, just relax your hands. Take a deep breath in through your nose, keep your eyes closed. Exhale through your mouth. Good. Now keep your eyes closed, look down at your chin. Now look up to the top of your head and back down. Up to the top of your head, back down with your eyes, look up, look down. One more, look up with your eyes, look down. Good. Relax your eyes, another deep inhale. And blow out, exhale. Very good. And just tune into your body, just quick, very, very fast body scan. Your feet, ankles, knees, thighs, hips, spine. Notice your shoulders, back of the neck, collarbone, going all the way down the left shoulder, down the left arm to your left hand, fingertips, just scanning in your mind. Going back up now, across your chest to the right side, going down your right arm, through your right fingers, back up your right arm, and just bring your awareness to the center of your brain and just notice. Tune into your breathing. Very good. And when you're ready, take a deep inhale and very soft exhale. Good. And open your eyes whenever you're ready. Again, just notice as you create that safe window for yourself, that window of tolerance, that safe space where you can actually expand your capacity right now. This is the place where you're at your highest resilience. Even though there might be some things that you might notice in the body, you might have even had some experiences of a little anxiety or a little joy, whatever, you have the capacity for both, positive and negative. So this is what it's like to be an emotional and resilient place where you're more like the river and you're allowing everything to flow. Okay, good. So we are going to take a short break right now. So the cameras can go off.